Welcome to Stop My Crisis. I'm your host, Vivian Gaspar. If you're a small business owner, you've worked really hard to get where you are, and now you want to grow by hiring employees. And you should be aware that sometimes it doesn't work out just as you wanted to. And the last thing you want to do is to spend money on employment attorneys. Let's learn now from one who is an employment attorney how to prevent claims of hostile work environment perhaps, or sexual harassment in the workplace in your small business. Welcome, Joe Morano. He currently serves as Senior Director of Faculty Relations and Title IX Coordinator for the Culinary Institute of America. He is a certified professional in human resources from the Human Resource Certification Institute and is also certified as a Title IX Coordinator from the Association of Title IX Administrations. Joe, that is a mouthful of credentials, but we know that makes you exceptionally well qualified to speak on this topic. Help our business owners keep their workplace from becoming a victim itself of sexual harassment and being claims of a hostile work environment. How do we do that?
It's a multifaceted question. Small business owners especially have it more difficult than, for instance, larger corporations. If you're a large corporation, you have a human resources department, you have expensive attorneys at your beck and call, you have employee handbooks, you have policies, and that's the thing. In a large corporation, there are ways to deal with it. If you're in a smaller company, and even 15 or less, you may not have those resources, but you still have access to resources that are out, again, the internet, but also local employment attorneys who can help you. And part of this is to set yourself up to understand exactly what you need to do. Every office is small. People are human. And one of the things that you have to be careful of when you start a business is just know, do you have a policy about harassment? How are you going to address that if it happens? You have a difficult employee. What are you going to do about that? What if you have to fire somebody?
Oh,
How are you going to do that?
This is all very scary for a business owner that's starting out, but people have to remember that I believe it's over 35 to 40% of everyone who's employed in this country is employed by a firm that I believe is 20 or less employees. So this is actually a tremendous concern. And it's not just that, let's say the small business owner would do something to harass an employee. Couldn't it be said if one employee has an issue with another employee?
Absolutely, and that's the biggest challenge. You could be in a very small office. You have two employees going at it with each other, whether it's sexual, discriminatory, racial, those things come up. If you're owning that business, you have to address it.
How do you address it? What's the first step, second step? Because I know there's laws in place, but in practicality, what's the best way to handle something as it starts bubbling to the surface with keeping things still smooth and comfortable and not causing any kind of a disruption workflow?
Well, first of all, you address it quickly. You nip it in the bud. Anything that's left to fester, nothing good can happen. So if you have two employees, you have to deal with both of them fairly. It doesn't mean you have to hire an outside investigator and do an investigation, but right away you need to talk to both of them separately and then together and find out what's going on. One of the challenges of today's workplace versus 20 years ago is the proliferation of...
So you're saying that one of the advantages of now versus 20 years ago
is, well, advantage and disadvantages. The disadvantage of people using the internet, and specifically email. Email is, I always joke around with employees, is one of those things that seems to have, back in the day when you would write a letter, you'd be very deliberate, you'd type it, you'd review it, maybe you'd put it away and you would send it. Internet email allows apparently what's going on in your brain to bypass the other parts of your brain and go right into the computer. And I say that as counseling managers, deans, any other people that I work with, about being very deliberate and thoughtful with your emails. Even in a small business, you could be close to somebody. Don't goof around. Don't joke. No flip comments. I suppose a smiley face might be okay, but even there, you don't want to create that atmosphere of any unprofessional correspondence, because now, unlike 10, 15, 20 years ago.
How about we go back to the 1950s? I was just watching the show that's now, it's off air, but Mad Men. Did you ever see
love that show.
Going back to the 1950s, or I think it was actually 60s and early 70s, wow, I mean, you'd see the stereotypical things. I mean, I can't believe this actually happened. But it's now, you can't even make any kind of a joke, forget how racially charged or sexually charged the jokes were back then. How serious do you really need to keep your work environment? Do we even have fun anymore? So what does somebody really have to be careful of? I mean, do you have to be so vigilant that your workplace becomes unfun and uncomfortable to be in?
You could always smile. You could joke. And again, in this environment, we talk about predatory employees who are looking for an axe to grind.
Why would someone do that? And how do you prevent that from taking over the atmosphere?
Well, let's say part of the important process, when you hire employees, what do you do to hire an employee? You just put an ad in the paper and you look at them and they're going to say, they look okay.
The paper online. That we're dating
online
ourselves.
Paper, yes, exactly. Well, we do everything. We do all our recruiting online. But let's say you meet with them and you do your best choice and you're very deliberate about it. You don't necessarily know that the person may not be a great employee. They may have an axe to grind. But what the situation, I'll give you an example I think would be helpful. I work for you. And you're now yelling at me because I keep coming in late. And I keep leaving early, and I am screwing up memos and things that I'm doing for you. And then you call me in and you say, Joe, you need to stop doing this. I'm very upset. You need to do these things, and your performance stinks. And then I bring out an email you sent me a couple of months ago where you kind of forwarded on some silly joke that you heard that you thought everybody would think would be funny. All of a sudden, that joke becomes, or that conversation we all had in the office becomes, well, you're discriminating against me, or I'll give you a great example of something that occurred to me in an old employer. I'm Italian-American. Grandfather came from Italy. The rest of my relatives came from Italy. I were at a big meeting, and someone suggested we were talking about possibly terminating an employee, that I knew how to truly terminate an employee because I had connections. That was not a good thing for that person to say. On the employee end, rather than make a big deal, I just addressed it and said, and you should remember this as an employee, I really didn't appreciate that comment. I didn't think it was appropriate. Please don't say that again. I take my heritage seriously, as all you in the room do. And then I got an apology and it was done. And that's usually on the lowest level how you deal with that. On the employer end, you have to be careful about how familiar you get, what you say. I don't want to make everybody paranoid that when they go into their own home office with their 2 or 3 employees that they have to worry about every little thing. But you need to really pay attention. And a lot of that starts with the internet and what people put, everything in email.
What about if it's something that's in context with the workspace? So we're all very nervous and cautious about sexual harassment, and that could be not just the stereotype cliche from like the Mad Men days where a guy pats a woman on the the rear, or he says, well, your work here is contingent upon favors. Let's not even pretend it goes that far, because that's just maybe not even that frequent. Let's hope it's not frequent. But what if it says some kind of innuendo, or let's say it's a joke saying, oh, is that lipstick in your pocket, or you're just happy to see me? Or just something that maybe it was in line with the situation that was happening. Should you be afraid of that? I mean, everything is a potential time bomb, or is it? I mean, if somebody was then complaining against you, or perhaps it was between employees and you can't mitigate that because how do you control other people's behavior?
Well, if they're in your office and it filters back into your office, you have to be responsible for it and breaking it up and telling both people, knock it off. Sometimes that works really well, sometimes not so much. Using Mad Men as an example, great show, but it's like what not to do in today's world.
It's a great thing. Let's just show everybody in HR and all business owners the show and say, okay, everything you see going down there, don't do anymore. No more smoking in the office.
I would watch that and say, you can't do that. You can't do that, but it was a different time. There's drama.
Everybody's smoking in the office, and then there's all the fraternization. I think the one girl got pregnant from the other guy she was working with. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But that's a great how not to do.
Yeah, watch that show and don't do anything on the show.
So then going back to the dating part, as a small business owner, is it smart to not allow fraternization, aka dating in the office place? Is that smart?
I prefer that. It's hard to enforce in a small office. You can't force people to do things outside. If you're at a large company, having a fraternization policy as part of their orientation, saying you shouldn't do this, there's reasons why some places have that. For the simple reason that you have a great relationship, you break up, and then it becomes civil war. And then the rest of your employees get involved in that. Your supervisors get involved in it.
And then, God forbid, there's revenge porn. Nowadays,
well,
that's a real
revenge porn,
real thing.
Simply rumors at the water cooler, emails that go back and forth. things that filter out to the office into text messaging and social gatherings that are all related to your work people that then filter back. It gets very complicated, but there's a lot of reasons to hopefully that doesn't happen. But I will tell you that notwithstanding fraternization policies, people will still date, because if you're working 10 or 12 hours a day, the people you're likely are going to meet are the people that you're working with.
You can't stop that.
It's kind of against human nature, but it's always a real challenge. And small business owners have to really keep an eye out for what's going on. But I always say, whatever you're doing, whether it's email or discussion with employees, be really thoughtful. If it's a serious discussion, bring another manager or trustworthy person into it as a witness. Make sure that people, things aren't filtering out. Really pay attention. A lot of people, having been an owner of a small business in the past, you sort of let things go on autopilot because you think things are growing. Well, you need to pay attention to your office staff. What's going on? Who's doing what? Who's mad? Why is this one sitting at their desk?
It's like almost babysitting employees. And I don't mean to be negative that way, or even that you should be micromanaging. But when you have to think of things that are on the personal level of interactions instead of just the workflow, it almost could feel that way.
It can. And you have to, if you're a small business owner and you care, you want to, just like if you're a large business, you should care about your employees for a lot of good reasons. One is legally, yes, but I think as human, we want to care about our employees. We care about them and their
you want
families.
them to be happy so they stay.
Right. We want good employees, hardworking employees.
Right.
We want to offer advancement. But that being said, that your admin that you've had for years that's doing their job and they're normally grumpy or whatever, if maybe they're having a rough day, say, hey, you okay? Is everything all right? You don't have to get into all kinds of details if they want to volunteer things, but you should care. And that's how you maybe learn things that you didn't know. If you notice two people in the office not speaking or being really nasty with each other, that's when you take it upon yourself to talk to both of them. And then if it involves both of them, you bring them together. But you never hide under your desk. You never let those things fester.
Not figuratively, hopefully figuratively, not literally.
I don't know anybody actually hides under their desk, but as an expression, you really need to address it right away, because the longer it goes on, it has a chance to bubble out of your office into other places. It could affect your business.
Right. You don't want to affect the bottom line, and then ultimately you have to lay off people because you're not making enough money, because you're now hurting the entire office environment. Because what if you do have 10, 15 employees, or even a few less?
Well, that's where the impact is great. If you only have 10 or 15 employees and 2 of your employees are fighting, what's the percentage of that of your office that's angry?
Right.
And it never just is confined to 2 people. It will bubble out. And then I'll talk to my friend and you'll talk to your friend, and then everybody picks sides, and you just don't want it to go there. And if it's disruptive to the office, you can always, and like I always say, consult an employment attorney. You can always look to discipline or terminate people for any non-discriminatory reason. That's the legal language. So what you need to do.
Well, so what about, you said you just brought up a good subject. You had mentioned about firing people. Now, don't you have to be very concerned with a couple of things? Like, for example, did you fire with good cause? Did you give written notification? And of course, were there any protected classes involved?
Yeah.
Those are some key things that I think people should keep in mind.
Yeah, everything from sex, race, color. It could go religion.
And so many protected classes.
It goes on, and it's moving to be more protected classes. But
is there anyone not a protected class?
Well, that's
I don't
a
think
question.
that's
I think that the bottom line is, you're a small business owner. You treat everybody with respect.
Equally.
Doesn't matter. Equally, you base everything on performance. And performance doesn't mean that I give you a review in a year and I say, you were really stinky, you're fired, and you get a written review saying you're bad. When any employee gets any kind of notification, if it's a review that you do, they should know before you get to the review what your assessment of their performance is. Whether it's every month, you bring them in and you talk to them, and they know that, yes, I'm doing a good job. You've said, and I always recognize that if I have someone who's doing a good job, I always say, hey, great, thank you, that was great. And if they're not doing a good job or I'm disappointed with something, I'll say, you know what, that really wasn't up to par. You need to give them that feedback.
What about social events? I mean, if you want to be a really good employer, you don't want to just keep everything dry and mundane. And hopefully you have an annual holiday party. But even if it's not annual, maybe it's nice to have a gathering a few times a year. Is there anything a small business owner should be aware of or a little bit cautious about having social gatherings, let's say at a restaurant, or you go on one of those dinner cruises, or something more fun, or a picnic or a barbecue for the company?
I mean, I'm more conservative. I say if you're going to do that as a small business, if you keep it to a restaurant, that's fine. Limit alcohol. Everybody has a glass of wine. There's a lot of bad things that can happen that if you look at old case law, there's a lot of things that did happen that were really bad. But you want to be social with your employees. You want them to like you. You want them to like each other. So that makes sense. Just, we're going to go on a booze cruise.
No,
I would not recommend. I'm just saying as an example. That's not a good idea.
You see so many horror stories about holiday parties gone awry, and then you just don't want to end up in that position, because what if somebody blames the employer?
You can blame the employer. You can blame fellow employees. And the employer is always the first target. Well, you let me drink all that stuff, or I walked off the boat and I fell down and it's all your fault. You're always looking at extreme situations.
Or even at a restaurant. It's not just a boat.
Yeah, it could be you're going to the bathroom and you slipped and you fell and it's all your fault.
And they could blame you for a drunk driving incident if you allow alcohol.
It's all, and that's it. We'd like to all think we're dealing with reasonable, respectable people, but not everybody is like that. So unfortunately, you just, before you plan that party, think about it. Sometimes what we've seen is people, you have a nice holiday party, everybody brings in some food, you bring in some juice or some other thing that's non-alcoholic, you have a toast, and everybody hangs out and has a good time, and it's kept very limited. Or you go to a restaurant, no, we're not ordering alcohol, or we order one bottle of wine and we all have a toast. You have to think about those things, and it sounds really scary, but if you have a small business and then you put your life into this business,
yes,
you need to think about those things.
This is really important to think about, because when you're a small business owner, and all of us can relate to it, you don't work a 5 to 8 hour day, especially in the beginning. You're working 12 to 15 hour days to raise this baby you gave birth to, and to have it mature and become somebody wonderful. Because if you're at the point of having employees, that is a good thing. You're giving people jobs. So thank you, Joe, for coming on. And I know a lot of our business owners are taking some very good advice from this. So remember, it's great to have employees. It's fantastic that you got to that level, but protect your business. Do the smart things. And remember to nip any potential situation when it first starts to come about. Don't let it fester, because then you'll encounter what you really don't want: potential lawsuits and, unfortunately, employment attorney fees. Keep your business safe, prevent a crisis, don't have to stop it later. Welcome back to Stop My Crisis. I'm your host, Vivian Gaspar. Business credit is one of the most important tools for success small business owners can have in their portfolio. And I'm here today, very fortunately, to have an expert in how small business owners can act more like large corporations and utilize business credit to their advantage. Here with me today is S.E. Day. S.E., welcome to the show, and thank you for helping small business owners last and profit and thrive in their businesses by using finance to their benefit.
Vivian, thank you for having me on the show. In launching this book, I know your passion for small businesses and helping them achieve to stop their crisis, and I thought this would be the perfect place to launch this book with you from an advocate standpoint.
Well, we're very excited because I know this can change and pivot small business owners who might be getting started or launching to a new level in their business. Understand that overcoming the financial hurdle is what would help them make or break, or even hire a bigger staff or get the marketing or whatever they need to get to a higher level of success. And you are going to be what helps them accomplish that.
Absolutely. In your opening, you said that business credit was one of the most important tools a small business can have in their portfolio. You're absolutely right. Shockingly, 99% of small businesses do not have business credit, nor do they know how to go by establishing it.
I am really shocked about that. How is it virtually every single small business owner does not understand that? How is that possible?
Two issues. One, there's no unilateral lending process across the spectrum between banks, credit unions, credit reporting companies. No one's synced. The second thing is small business owners think that business credit is a misnomer. They think that you have to use your personal credit to get business credit, and that's not the case.
Is there anyone currently out there educating small business owners on that? How about through the SBA or SBDC or any other business advisory to small business owners?
No.
No one.
No. No.
That's possibly what is the answer behind why 99%?
This is what gave me the wherewithal to write this book. I went to a conference years ago, and it was basically how to bring funding to small business owners. In this conference, a room full of 200 people, you had all of your alphabet soup. All that soup you just named, including the Federal Reserve, the FDIC, Bank of America, Chase, and they were talking about business credit. So for an hour, they talked about how a small business owner would need business credit to make their business grow. And finally, after an hour, I raised my hand and I said, I have a question. Can anyone in the room tell me how to go about establishing business credit?
Let me guess. There was silence.
Crickets.
Crickets. Worse than silence.
Yes, worse than silence. So I said, I've done over 9,000 hours of research in dealing with banks, credit unions, credit reporting companies. I love the way they call them credit reporting bureaus. They're not bureaus. They're for-profit companies.
Of course they're.
Equifax,
They get money.
Experian, yes, those are
Aren't
for-profit
they totally
companies.
for-profit where they actually charge
Absolutely.
for every single time
Absolutely.
they give you a credit report?
Yes, they want
Contribution.
money. So they're not bureaus. They're companies.
Misnomer right there.
Misnomer. So one of the things that I realized was in doing that research in 17 years of dealing with businesses and structuring businesses was that small business owners do not understand the playing field. It's a maze.
I've always heard to have good personal credit, you should have some amount of credit cards at a certain amount of usage level.
Yeah.
You know, I heard it's like you should have no more than 33% or so, or 30%
Actually,
used.
no more than 30%.
Is that, I'm sorry?
No more than 30%
30%,
usage.
correct.
Yes.
No more than 30% used to
Right.
establish better credit as an
Right.
individual. Now, people say, well, I don't want a credit card, I don't want debt, but you should in order to have better credit worthiness because you don't know if you want a mortgage or if you want a car.
Right.
So for a small business owner, if they're not looking to take on business credit, what is the benefit for them to establish credit worthiness for their business entity?
Here's the deal. I always ask a business owner, what are your plans for the future?
Do you mean like a 5-year plan?
It can,
3-year plan?
it can be a 1-year plan. And most is like, I want to grow a successful business and make money.
Now, shouldn't they have a business plan to be able to answer that properly?
Well, that's a whole nother topic. But before we go there, let's go back on the credit side.
Right.
In this country, cash is no longer king.
Credit is.
Credit is king.
Do enough people realize that?
No. A
That
lot,
might
and
be
a
the
lot of
problem.
business owners are like, well, I don't want debt. You
That's
don't
exactly my
understand.
point.
Managed debt is good debt, and you can grow your business through managed debt.
Now, do you
Having
also
no
address
debt-
managed debt in your book?
Say again?
Do you address managed credit in your book?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are different phases of credit that you should have. So a credit card is one thing, even on the personal side, right? But that's only one strain of credit. What about installment loans? So if you have a credit card, let's say your credit score was 730, it will never go over 730. I don't care if you only use 14% usage of the card, it'll never go over 730 because to a lender, you don't have enough risk. We need to know how are you with installment loans.
Okay, so here's my credit question. For a small business owner's credit for the business entity,
Right.
if you're a sole proprietor, does that still count or
Towards your business?
towards your business?
No.
Okay, so you have to be an established, is it LLC or S Corp?
Let's talk about
Or
that.
C Corp.
We touched on that earlier.
Correct.
Here's the deal. You need to be a structured corporation.
So that includes the S Corp, C Corp, or LLC?
No, not LLC.
Not LLC. So
me
it can
tell
only
you
be an
why.
S Corp or C Corp.
Yes, because you have the S Corp has something called pass-through taxation.
That's correct, yes.
And this is why a lot of people run to the LLCs because of pass-through taxation. You can get the same thing with an S Corp, pass-through taxation. The only difference is you have to file your intentions with the IRS.
Correct.
I think it's the form 8338 that you plan to file as a small business with pass-through taxation. But because corporations are more structured, and when I say that, you're set up with the Secretary of State, you have your board members listed, you have your principals listed.
Correct.
2 things creditors care about: stability.
Wait, you said 2 things.
2 things corporate creditors care about:
Correct.
stability and accountability.
Okay.
I want to be able to touch you when I need you. In other words, I want to be able to call and talk to a live person that's a member of that corporation. And stability. I want you to be making money. I want you to be a stable company. I don't want you to have a post box that's used as your business address.
Oh, P.O. box.
Yeah.
What about, okay, now that we're on that topic,
Okay.
does it make a difference if it's a UPS store address? One
Yes,
of
it
those?
does.
So that's not going to work either?
That's not good at all.
Okay.
You can actually use your home address. In fact, I encourage you in the book, use your home address. It's a stable address. You've been there. It's
Okay.
registered to you.
Here's another question of why someone would want business credit. So even if somebody right now says, oh, I don't want to have the burden having debt, what about in the future? What if right now, for example, let's say someone starts as a business that rents out of a small office space or retail space, or even there's a lot of home-based businesses.
Right.
What if down the line they might end up growing their business
Right.
and might look to maybe perhaps buy commercial real estate? Can a entity such as your C Corp or S
Right.
Corp build up enough business credit to buy real estate in that entity's name? Can that be that purpose?
Yes. Now let's go back to how old corporations are. They've been around since the 1800s, which is why they are the preferred
Dun and Bradstreet we're talking about.
No, I'm talking about corporations.
Oh,
S
just
corp-
the concept of corporations.
The legal structure
I
of
see.
corporation has been around since the 1800s, which means it is strong. When you get your tax ID number, a corporation is considered an artificial entity.
Yes, you have
That
to.
means
You
it
kind of
can
give
live.
birth to it, and when
You
you,
have to
don't
give
want it
birth to
more,
it.
you have to kill it off, so to speak.
Right.
You
But
have
the
to close
first
it.
chapter in the book is you are not your company. Think about it. You're a small business owner. You wear all the hats. You have to do everything. But your company is like a baby. You have to grow it up. You are not the baby. You're the parent of the baby. Same thing with a corporation. Your tax ID number is like the Social Security number for your business. And you should build it up and build credit in that. In the book, I talk about the ways to build it up, the right corporate structure, and there are 11 critical requirements that every small business owner must have.
11.
11.
That's something we're going to cover now.
No,
So you really do need
no.
to get the
But
book,
I'll
because
give you
that's
two
something
of
I
them.
never even realized.
I'll give you two of them. Let's say you start a business, right?
Yes.
You're doing fine and you're doing banking as, Stop My Crisis, Vivian Gaspar.
That's not the name, but I'm not going to say it now.
Right, doing business as Stop My Crisis. You're considered a sole proprietor
Correct.
because your company, your bank account is not attached to a corporation. It's attached to you, the individual. That's one critical element. You have to have a bank account
Of
in your
course.
business name.
I'm sure every small business owner has a bank account in their business's
No,
name,
they
right?
don't. No.
Oh.
No. A lot of them are doing business as. Here's the thing. A lot of people will get their tax ID number and say, hey, I got my business up. I'm ready to go. And all
Well,
you
how
have
do
is
you
your
not
tax
have a
ID
bank
number.
account? How do you not have a bank account for that business?
It's doing business as.
So an individual doing business as a, wait,
Right. I already have my account
name,
with my
doing
bank.
business number with my company name?
Exactly.
That's not sufficient. That's not enough.
SE Day doing business as CETA Media Corporation.
Ah, that's not enough.
Terrible. Terrible.
That's not a good way.
Another thing, real simple. What is your email address to your company?
It should be at my company. It's Vivian at
At-
stopmycrisis.com.
A lot of people, it's seday@gmail.com.
That is
Corporate creditors don't
it's
take
very,
you.
very unprofessional.
Corporate creditors don't take you serious. If you don't take your business serious, why would a corporate creditor?
Thank you very much, SC. That is fantastic information.